All right, good evening everyone, and thank you for joining us for this live streamed presentation in collaboration with the Los Alamos Mountaineers. This virtual event is being brought to you by the Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEEC, and which operates the Los Alamos Nature Center. The Nature Center is currently closed due to COVID-19, but we still have lots of ways that you can interact and connect with nature. Please check out the PEEC website, that's peaknature.org, for our new Take It Outside initiative and lots more live stream presentations like this one. Just a quick shout out to all of our wonderful donors, staff, volunteers, members. They're making this possible for us to continue offering programming at this time.
Welcome to the 4th monthly Zoom-only meeting. Being the president of the Mountaineers is a year-long gig, and it turns out a third of it was almost a freebie. So glad to see everyone coming back for more online meetings, seeing some old friends from out of town, and happy to see people still trying to get out. My street is getting all full of brand new RVs. So it looks like everyone's getting out and trying to stay socially distanced. So I'm glad to see it. We are still trying to do some trips. And to talk about those, we have Joy Whittle.
Good night, everybody. Good to see everyone virtually. Thanks for joining in tonight. It's really wonderful. I'm excited for this presentation. So this week we started our first Monday night ski hill hike and social distancing picnic. We all shouted at each other and had a wonderful time eating up at the top of the Pajarito ski hill. Next. So here we are up there eating our dinner and our picnic after hiking up the 2 miles. Some of us were a little out of shape. Some of us just went right to the top. Here's us coming down as the sun was setting. It was a beautiful evening. So you want to come join us, bring your picnic, bring something to sit on because we can't sit around the table. Also, Bill and Melissa and Chris and France went on a hike, Coyote Call hike, and went out by Bandelier National Forest. So there are still places to access Bandelier. You just have to kind of figure out which ones are closed and which ones are opened. Also, Bill Podorski led the Llama Drop trip in Upper Sand Creek, which is in the Escalante Staircase National Monument, where they pack everything on the llamas, and the llamas bring them into this wonderful remote area of the wilderness and leave them there for a week. And they had a wonderful time. Next, and we'll show, so here they are setting up camp. They bring everything they need for food and comfort, and looks like they found a nice shady spot down there. Some beautiful rock formations in that area. And let's keep looking at some of, there's one that's just fabulous. So here's one with the lips and all the views in that area, and they're just really out in the middle of nowhere. So he's got a couple others coming up if you're interested. I love this picture of this rock formation, and they had a wonderful time. Thanks for sharing that with us, Bill. And here's Patty Walls hiking out of Sand Creek. She had a great time too. Thanks, Patty, for sending that cute picture. Irene Powell sent in pictures, and you know, sometimes we don't have to go very far. Just hiking up Camazon Trail, you just have these amazing views. So she hiked up to the top and caught some beautiful views and skyline of our wonderful Los Alamos. So Zach has been really busy helping put together an interactive trip report. I'm going to turn it over to Zach, and he's going to explain this for our benefit. Thank you.
Hey, this is Zach, your webmaster. So the Mountaineers website has had a lot of trips over the years, and they all have a lot of good content. But we thought it'd be fun to try to put them all on a map. So now, if you go to the Mountaineers website, you can find this map, and the different colors mean different things. The little purple guys up around Iceland and Greenland are all general meetings reports like this one. And then all the little blue guys are actual trips we've taken. So it's kind of fun to page around and zoom in and see where all of the Mountaineers have gone over the years. So I encourage you to check out our website and click around. And the Mountaineers have been saving up money for a long time. We always call it our rainy day fund, and this is kind of a rainy day. So we're looking for grant applications for local action. So we're looking to give away a number of grants, reimbursements in the $300 or so range for various things that benefit our local community. Some ideas are trail work, going out, cleaning trees off trails, reroutes, buying new chainsaw chains, buying gloves, Eagle Scout projects or Gold Award projects for Girl Scouts. If you need supplies, buying bags of concrete or dividers or whatever might be needed for your project. Climbing area rehabilitations, a lot of money goes into climbing areas, and we try to appreciate that. And so if you need some money to replace anchor hardware, for instance, maybe we can help you provide that. As well, just general outdoor cleanup events. We already did a big trash pickup project this summer, but if you want to organize something bigger and maybe provide snacks and beverages to your volunteers, we could help you with that. So help us spend our rainy day fund. We'll send out an email to the whole membership about how to apply. And if you don't get that, just let anybody on the Mountaineers board know. That's it. Thank you. And now back to Bill.
So I want to support our trip coordinator, Joy, here by urging folks to start doing trips and announce them through the Mountaineers. It's our opinion that with proper social distancing, that the outdoors is a safe place to be. And you can see how we did the Monday ski hill hike. We kept our distance, but not so far that we couldn't feel that we were together. So I've got a few trips going, and I urge others to do so. And as a reminder, why should you lead a Mountaineers trip? It kind of comes down to reason number one for me. You get to go where you want, when you want, and you can pull in folks of your choosing to join you. And the Mountaineers is such a place to make friends and reinforce lifelong friendships. And the trips are the way we do it. So please get your ideas out there for the club also. Let me mention a couple of things that are going. Next slide, please. So I've just announced a backpacking trip. This is an easy backpacking trip to high meadow country in northern New Mexico, almost but not quite to Colorado. Little rock formations, little trout streams, all kinds of area to explore. We're going to put that trip together for July, for the 4th of July weekend. And there's a little bit of space available on that yet. Salmon River trip, sadly, the Mountaineers have basically canceled out of that. That felt a little too tight to be safe at the time. Next slide, please. Moab. We'll one way or another make it safe. We have a big house, reasonable amount of space. From there, we explore on biking, on hiking, some canyoneering, and there is in fact one bedroom available for this trip. So let me know if you want to join it. And then the raft trip for next year is looking good. That one is booked up at this point. Canyon trips keep on coming. October llama trip is full at this point with a short waiting list, and I'm talking to the packer about something for the spring of 2021, so stay posted. So join our trips and lead our trips. Over to the program, I believe.
Great, thank you so much, Bill and Zach and Joy and all the rest of the Mountaineers. Now, yes, we are going to move on to the presentation. John, I'm sorry, this is a really long list of names here, but I just found you and I'm going to make you a co-host so you can start sharing your screen while I give a quick introduction. Tonight, we have John Lyles showing us Lechuguilla Cave, which recently surpassed 150 miles of explored passages. John has spent nearly a year of his life underground exploring and mapping as a volunteer on this project. When he's not caving, John is an electrical design engineer for LANL, working down at the Proton Accelerator at the Los Alamos Neutron Science Center. His interest in caving began in 1975 while at Virginia Tech in the Appalachian Mountains, and has continued ever since, leading him to various parts of the country and finally settling in New Mexico. He enjoys the solitude and isolation from the hustle of work and life on Earth's surface while spending a week underground with a group of like-minded friends exploring the unknown. Sounds like my kind of thing too. Without further ado, I will hand this over to John. Looks like you're unmuted there, John. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Awesome, we can hear you, we can see you. I don't see your screen yet though.
Well, here it comes. How's that?
That looks great there. All right, and I'll hand it over to John. I'll monitor for those questions or comments coming in on the chat. And yeah, take it away, John.
Okie dokie. Thanks everybody, and I'm happy to see some of my caving friends checked in here too tonight. So hopefully they'll see some pictures they haven't seen, but a lot of these photos of Lechuguilla is sort of a classic cave to photograph. So I'm going to show a lot of photographs, but let me first show you the beginnings of how the cave started being discovered and how I got involved. So let's see, there we go. So the cave is in the Guadalupe Mountains in southeast New Mexico near Carlsbad, southwest of Carlsbad, and just in the national park, but about 4 miles from Carlsbad Cavern. It was formed in the Permian age limestone dolomite formation there, so that makes it about 260 million years old for the rock. But the cave was developed oddly through oxidation of hydrogen sulfide into sulfuric acid. And where did the hydrogen sulfide come from? Well, it came up from the oil and gas deposits beneath the reef there. So it's very unique in that it did that, and it dissolved the limestone and created these great caverns and passages. And then it deposited a lot of secondary deposition of gypsum in the cave. So you'll see a lot of that. And that happened, it's believed to be about 6 million years ago. What is Lechuguilla? It's the little lettuce. It's that sharp-spined agave that you see on the right of my photograph. And that stuff will give you a flat tire or go right through your shoe if you step on it. And that's all over the hills around there. That's the name of the cave too. And it's only open to research and mapping projects pretty much by the National Park Service, plus a bit of video work that has been done in there. I'll talk about that. So the cave is almost 1,600 feet deep from the entrance to the bottom level, which is at the water table. And it's the 4th longest cave in the USA, at just like Beth said, over 150 miles now. And that just happened in this spring or right before COVID that we passed 150 miles. So, and of course, you've seen Carlsbad Caverns National Park. And if you've walked down to the natural cave entrance to the big cave, you see these buildings up on the hill, and that's where we stay when we're working on the project. We get to stay in one of those buildings off to the left there, and keep our gear there and take showers when we come out of the cave and stuff. So we do a lot of other volunteer work besides Lechuguilla Cave, but let me just talk about Lech tonight. I'll say Lech sometimes. That's our shorthand for Lechuguilla. It's a lot easier to say, so I'll say Lech. How do we get to the cave? Well, we go with a hike that's about a mile hike from the car, and then you drive on a dirt road to your park and go through a gate, and then we carry our backpacks, and here you see some 40+ pound packs on some cavers hiking over the hills. You hike over a ridge and then down and then up the other ridge, and you have to kind of watch for not stepping on those Lechuguillas. So the lower left photo is the cave entrance. That big chasm is the beginning of the cave where this big pit is. And you can see on the right, the cavers all have their vertical gear on and their packs and stuff. And we pretty much wear that gear the whole time when we're moving around in the cave, because this cave is a vertical cave. We also sometimes get critters like this near the entrance. We leave them alone. It's a cute little rattlesnake. And you can see the cave entrance just to the left of that snake. So we have to wish by on the left of that bush, and you can see the rope hanging there. So we go by and leave the snakes alone. So how did I get into this project? I got sucked into this cave. I started caving when I was at Virginia Tech in the 70s and caved through the middle of the 80s in the Midwest and in the middle Atlantic states like Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. And then in 1991, I watched this national news story about this rescue in New Mexico of an injured caver. And it was a huge rescue and it lasted a week. And I said, where is this? I don't even know much about New Mexico, but much less this cave. So 1992, the opportunity came. I moved to Los Alamos, joined the local caving club called Pajarito Grotto, of which Beth is a member as well. And in 1993, I was invited on a mineral inventory trip in the cave. 94, I joined Jake Turin on some water collection trips. He was doing a lab-sponsored project, collecting water, doing some radioisotopic analysis of the water down in the cave. So then in 1995, I found my real calling, which is mapping the cave with a project called LEARN, Lechuguilla Exploration and Research Network. It's now defunct, but back then that was the way you could get in the cave and help map it. And then in 2022, I guess I've camped 39 trips of 4 to 8 days and 36 day trips. And I haven't added up how many days it is, but it's a little less than a year. Definitely, you know, spent a part of my life in that place. Here's some old articles you may have seen. These were National Geographic in '91. This brought the world's attention to this new cave in New Mexico, and it also brought my attention. There was some films made about the cave. There was a Nova called The Mysterious Life of Caves. That was kind of neat. That was back in the early 2000 era. And that had a lot of the biologists from UNM involved in it and some talking about the cave science. And then there was Planet Earth did an episode, and I worked on that as a Sherpa supporting it. And then One Strange Rock, when that came out in 2016, and a bunch of us worked on that as well. That was actually a paid gig for 2 weeks down there, so it was really nice because they paid better than Lano pays to be a Sherpa to haul camera gear. I actually hauled that camera you see on your right. That camera was $36,000, and they trusted me to carry it into the cave in a big padded backpack, and then they took lots of neat video with it. So here's how the cave was basically discovered. In 1914, there was a guano pit, a guano mine there. In 1953, cavers started drawing maps of this pit and noticed wind in the rubble at the bottom of the pit. The pit's only about 60 or 80 feet deep, and it's just a dead-end pit back then. In 1977, cavers started realizing that if they dug, they might be able to find a real cave below it, a large cave. But they were unsuccessful. And then in 1984, Dave and Vi Allerid dug over 4 different projects and managed to finally open it up in 1986 on Memorial Day weekend. I want to point out that Vi Allerid actually retired and lives in Los Alamos now. So she's one of the first people to be there when it opened, you know, when the cave was first found. So it was rapidly explored. I won't spend a lot on this slide, but you can see over the first 9 years, the cave, those were the miles added per year. So by the 1995, it was 70 miles long in those 9 years. And the little stars in 1993, that's when I got involved. So there had been a lot of discovery before I even got involved in the cave. So what I'm going to show here are these line plots. Now what you see is a plan view looking down from space at the cave, and that's the lower part. And the top part is the profile view. So you're looking across the surface of the cave and you can see how three-dimensional it is. So I'm going to click through these sort of fast. We'll see how this works on Zoom. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You're not missing much. But you can see the dates flickered by on the bottom. So here's 1987. You can see in 1987, quite a bit was discovered. That big red branch is the western borehole, and I'll have something on that later. The entrance is that little green thing at the left. The little tip on the left at the top that's the entrance to the cave. Then in 1988, you can see a lot more. All the red stuff is the new stuff in each year. So the green was already discovered. Then you see the red added to it. And I'm not going to name all these places because there's thousands of names in this cave. In 1989, the eastern branch was discovered, and that's the big glob on the left, oh, excuse me, on the right side of your screen. That's the far east, we call it. And the southwest branch is the thing off to the lower left. And then 1990, it's just a little bit of work. 1991, there was some more additions up there. And you can see each year there's a little red showing what was found that year. And this is when I got involved, right here. And so there was a whole lot in 1994 off to the lower left, right in this area. It's called South Winds. That's not South Winds. The next photo is South Winds. The next slide. There's South Winds, this area here. Okay, so the cave was really moving fast in terms of exploration. There was a lot of people going into the cave. It slowed down in around 1997. The Park Service started limiting the amount of trips and just to keep the impact down. So we had 12 cavers per trip maximum, and each trip would discover about a mile of new cave passages. And then there was this entrance airlock that you're going to see in this moment, in a few moments. It's this fabulous stainless steel device that they spent $100,000 on and flew in a helicopter and lowered it into the wilderness, and then volunteers installed it. That happened in 2000. And so now we go between 3 and 8 expeditions a year. Obviously, we haven't done too much this year because of COVID right now. And all these teams are going on private proposals that we write, and we focus on mapping and scientific research. There's 40,000 survey stations in the cave. That's the mapping points, and that makes it over 150 miles, and you look at it all. We focus on the climbs, the crawls, the fissures, the pancakes, because all the easy big walking passages are all discovered now, have pretty much been found. But the way to find more of them is to crawl through little tight things, and then it opens up again. So the cave's going to keep going. We're pretty sure of that just based on the wind. It has sometimes real high velocity winds at the entrance. And you can see there's spectacular discoveries that I'm going to show, but there's also disappointments that I'm not going to show, but there have been plenty of those. Here's some more following through. I'm going to just speed through this. I worked on the thing on the far left. That's Zanzibar. We called it Zanzibar. I came up with the name. Some of these names we come up with on a whim, you know, whatever, for whatever reason we name things. 2002, not too much happening. Then in 2003, the Promised Land. And that's that far left thing going to the west. That's really headed for the edge of the national park. But it ended. It didn't keep going. So that's pretty much the extent of the cave right there. I'm going to have to fly through these to get to the good stuff. 2008, I wanted to show this thing off on the right, that little thing there. I discovered that in a tight crawl. That's called the Nor'easter. Okay, So here's what it looks like. And this big red mark in the middle there is Oz. I'm going to show some photos of Oz later. And you can see at the top of your screen, Oz is a very high level above most of the rest of the cave. It's almost to the entrance. That was an outstanding discovery because it required this huge climb to get up there. And it opened up this giant passage that no one expected up there. So we now believe there's going to be a lot more cave on top of the cave, just like it is there. Okay, so we use a lot of ropes. We have approximately 329 ropes in the cave. Most of them are 9 to 11 millimeter, which is about 7/16 diameter. There really is 5 miles of ropes in that cave. And we're now going through and analyzing, scrutinizing, checking, replacing. The park's got an active program to make sure that the ropes aren't failing and there are not too many ropes. But you have to have what we call single rope techniques on your skill base so you can go in this cave. So here's a person. This was taken actually in last December. And this is a caver from the East Coast, from Pennsylvania, and she's got all her climbing gear on. And this is the entrance. So you rappel down that thing you saw in the field, in the desert out there, that pit. And then there's the airlock. And this is going down the tube in the airlock. It's got 2 doors because there's so much barometric wind blowing in this cave that we have to have 2 doors to prevent it from drying out and changing the biology in the cave. So the airlock is really a seal. And then you go down this ladder to the lower part to where you start walking again. And this is the bottom of the ladder. You can see you got to do this with a big backpack on too. That's yours truly going down one of the pits. This is Boulder Falls, which is one of the big drops that you hit in the first 20 minutes in the cave, and you get to this 150-foot drop that you have to rappel down. And there I am on the rappel. You can see the blue, my outfit. So you rappel down into this giant room. This is a place that we used to call Freak Out Traverse. You're on a safety line, but that's a 90-foot shaft right below her, so you don't want to slip there. And luckily, we have all these safety lines. And this is an apricot pit, which is really a nuisance. I've got a few photos of this, but it goes down, probably 300 and something feet to the bottom in 6 different ropes to get down there. And it's on the way to the eastern branch. That's also apricot pit. And you can see off to the right at the top, the bolts that we have now. So the rigging is fairly permanent. Stainless steel bolts drilled in with rock bolts. And this is also apricot pit. So there's a caver on the left going down. It's not a real easy climb down or climb up or rappel down. And then this is the round feature here is what we call boneyard on your right. A lot of the cave has that. And these kind of corrosional, solutional holes going all through the cave. And that's what they often call it, looks like Swiss cheese inside. That's me back in 1994, going down one of the drops with a small pack. And then here we are, one of the trips in the cave, you actually have to skirt around this lake with your pack. And this guy has a rope as well. And here's an interesting one. You got one guy going down on the left and another guy going up on the right, or vice versa. I guess the guy on the left's going up and the guy on the right's going down. And we actually have to yo-yo down and go back up because there was no rope going across on that particular day. And sometimes it's not real pretty. This is really dirty here. This is an area called Dire Straits, and it's really filthy, and the rope is really dirty and everything, but you got to be on rope because it's really exposed. And we've had rope problems. That's a failure of a sheath of a rope that was old, taken out of the cave. No one was hurt, but they do fail occasionally. One failed last year when someone was just pulling on it. So we now have a new concern that some of those old ropes, we really need to test them. Sometimes when we're going in the cave, we have to take a break. These are some of the little rest areas to stop and get your breath as you're going in, because the cave is 68 degrees, but it's 95% humidity. So camp in the cave looks like, let me talk about camps. There's 4 campsites in the cave right now. All of them are fairly close to water, within 15 minutes of a water source that we can actually save and drink. And in each branch, there's a camp. There's 3 main branches. And there used to be more camps, but they've been closed. The typical trips to get to the camps are between 4 and 8 hours from the entrance. And the cave is, like I said, 68 degrees, very humid. So lightweight bags, shorts. We don't like cotton anymore. We wear polymer clothes so that things will dry out. Otherwise, you stay wet the whole time from sweating. And we every day go out to get water, and we take care to avoid contamination of the water source. Excuse me. The meals are typically freeze-dried: oatmeal, cheese, dried fruit, candy, and other things that people come up with, innovative new foods that you can keep for a week without refrigeration. And we share pots and stoves and use jet boils and things like that to boil water. People bring drink mixes. Now the bathroom area, you're gonna wonder, what do we do about bathrooms? Well, we have special bags, kind of like Ziploc bags, that we save one thing in, and the other we put in these wine bags, and we store the liquid for the week, and we're able to jettison the liquid in special selected spots in the cave. If it's a short trip, you have to take it all out, and you do have to take your burrito bags out. This is one of the water spots. This is Lake Louise, that's the call. And that is a true water line up there, the 2 colors. These are called mammillaries, where the water has got calcification, has put calcification on the ceiling and caused those big round bulbous formations. And she's got the pitcher there, and she's being very careful not to touch the pitcher to her water bottle. This is the Western camp. It's the best camp in the cave. Beth's been in here a few times, a number of times, but here we are spread out. Here's another trip. And there's a first aid kit right in the middle of camp. And this is one of my French friends, Danielle, who was in there he's from near Paris, and he's got a very neat camp. This is an international cave. We bring in people from all over the world to go in that cave because it's such a spectacular cave. So we're kind of the host, the people who lead these trips, and then these people come, we invite people if they have the experience to go in there. Somebody here, this guy, Peter found a way to sleep without bringing a lot of gear. So you see he's using his pack as his foot, and he's kind of cheap. I mean, that's about as crude as you can do it and be comfortable. Big Sky's camp is in the South Branch, and there's my friend Andy on the left, and that's me on the right years ago. The Eastern camp is my favorite. It's sloped, and you have to dig in and be sure your stuff doesn't roll down the slope. So everybody's tucked in these little hills, and that's me in the lower left in blue. That's my camp, tucked in a little alcove. And in December, we had to have some Christmas lights. So somebody brought some portable LED lights, and we had them in camp. So when we came to camp at night, we had flashing lights. And then there's sleep, finally. And you do sleep well in this cave when you're worn out every day doing trips around. So here's what surveying cave passages looks like. Here we're shooting a laser rangefinder. It's called a Disto X. It captures the data, and we can shoot distance, bearing, and inclination with that instrument and shoot between 2 points. And here's somebody shooting. This was taken in January, actually, in a place called the Rift. And she's shooting the laser on the right, and then the target is the guy's hand down on the left, way down that passage. Then we have a sketcher. So here's some sketchers shown actually sketching the map. They do this by hand. We haven't figured out how to really do a good job of automating this. So it's right now, LiDAR is not ready for the cave yet, this cave. That's me using an old-fashioned instrument, a Sunto, which is an optical instrument. And that's me using an optical instrument while hanging on rope so I wouldn't fall down the pit while we were mapping. Then there's rest and scratches. I see Adam's got a big scratch on his leg there because he's been crawling in the gypsum. And then sometimes we have a little breaky break. This is one of our serious moments, it looks like. This is what the map would look like, a part of the cave. This is just the entrance part, past the boulder falls, the 150-foot drop. And the stuff on the right isn't finished, if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that on your screens, but that's like not completed yet. So you can see it's only drawn to there. So parts of the cave aren't complete yet. They're getting redone now with high quality sketching. This is one of Paul Berger's sketches. He's really good. This is a Derek Bristol map of Oz, the place I showed you that we found that's way up above. So this has got the profile view, and it's pretty well decorated with little photographs, and you can kind of see the surface of the land above the cave. And then sometimes we brag about how much we found this trip on the blackboard. So here's the photograph. So I'm going to share photographs the rest of the talk here. This is the entrance back in 1987, and I assume it was raining because there's water dripping in. And that was a slow photograph, probably taken with 35 millimeter. This is another old photo of a friend of ours, Donald Davis, in his suit. So this is when they didn't realize that 68 degrees, 95% humidity, you're gonna bake and roast in a suit. So he's wearing a complete suit like you would wear in Colorado. And of course, that wouldn't work these days. We don't do that anymore. And this guy's got jeans on and a cotton shirt, looking at that squiggly snake dancer formation. There's another one of a snake dancer. That's a soda straw with this thing coming off of it that's deposited and grown over time. And you see the water drip at the bottom. This is like, I forget the name of this, the Land of Oz, the staff, I don't know. And that's me in '93 when I was not gray haired and on my first trip. And this is an old friend of ours who's no longer with us at the old entrance. This is what the entrance used to look like. It was a piece of road culvert. And there we are in 1994 on a Jake Turin science trip. And you can see us up at the top there with the rope and everything. And there our camp is. It's not a very big camp. That was a really tight little camp. This is a thing called the Buddha. Step over in one of the room, prickly ice cube room. There's this place you have to step across this chasm. And this is one of the many, many, many fossils in the cave. It's a big, like nautilus thing and type of ammonite, I guess. And that thing is like 6 inches across. So these are Permian fossils. This is the famous Lechuguilla chandelier ballroom. And these are the chandeliers. These things are like 15 feet long. They're made of selenite, a gypsum mineral, and they've been photographed many, many times and put in presentations and movies and things. But that was me for scale a long time ago. These are called draperies hanging down from the ceiling. They also look like bacon that's been cooked. It's a flowstone, a calcite formation. This is a nice brachiopod. It's sticking out of the wall like a big potato chip, but it's a fossil from the Permian era. I found this thing. Now I'm going to show you the mother lode. You can see where it is on the big map here, off to the bottom left. It's a spectacular big room. It's 170 feet tall, has a big echo when you yell in it, and you can see the person for scale on the floor there. And then it's got these neat formations that have fallen from the ceiling somehow and busted open, and you can see they look like tree rings, but they're really calcite rings. So you could, if you knew what the depositional rate was, you could date it from that. That's me on the left. You can hardly see me underneath that giant pile of draperies above me. And they're all coming at different angles too, because things have shifted. There's a guy right at the bottom here. You can see him standing here for scale. And this is in that same room. And you can see the tilting of the bedding here. This is actually the bedding of the formation, the back reef formation, and it's bedded and it's also tilted a little bit. It's got a dip there. This is some, what do you call these? Well, they're stalagmites, but I can't remember the name of them. Pagodas, like cactus. These are cave pearls. These are the size of ping pong balls or golf balls in that mother lode. They're formed by water dripping down in pools, getting a bit of calcite and slowly rotating the piece and making a round sphere, just like a pearl would be formed in an oyster. But these take a lot longer. This is looking up at some of those draperies above me. And then we're wondering like, how did that happen? That thing fell, landed sideways, and then cemented into the rest of the stuff. And sometimes it's not so pretty. This is like a tight passage right below that beautiful room, mother lode. And so we call this the another lode. And it's not a lode at all. It's a horrible place. But anyway, we had fun exploring it. So Western Borehole, I mentioned earlier, is a giant section of the cave. Many discoveries have been found on the Western Borehole. It's over a mile long. This is just a walk on the Western Borehole. And you can literally walk the whole way. You don't have to crawl or anything. It's big. And you pass the Three Amigos. These are drilled gypsum formations where though everything's dissolved except for these, they seem to be hardened and water dripped through them. You can kind of see there's like a drill tube through the middle of them where water dripped and they've left standing. And this is frost work. It's a aragonite formation. We call it frost work when it's small like this. This is the big stuff. This is aragonite bushes. Sometimes they're as big as Christmas trees in the cave, and those are all rock, crystal, not rock, but mineralization. So they're really delicate, and you got to be very careful moving around them. This is a cute little, I guess it's a selenite needle of some type, zigzagged, that Max Wieszak, I think, took a photo of a few years ago. There's James Hunter. He might be on here tonight, I don't know, but that's a nice big selenite cluster that they're looking at there. This is another photo in the Southwinds area. Beautiful. This is called Flower Wars. Those are gypsum flowers. They're curlicue like that, and some of them are like a meter long now. They've been finding even bigger ones. This is just a pool that the bottom was reddish colored over time, and then these bushes grew out of it, these stalagmites. Or when the water came, it dissolved them and coated them over, but you can see where they were, never got coated. So the water level was very stable for a long time. This is a typical rest time during a survey, and two of those guys are from France, Michelle and Danielle, and then Andy and I on the ends there in this really dirty area. This is the oasis. It's the end of the Western Borehole, but it's not the end of the cave there, but it's a big pool basin. And the pool's almost gone now. You can see a little bit of water on the left. And that's me wondering how heavy those things are and how stable are they? Will they fall? I'm guessing they're a couple hundred pounds, maybe 300. But they were underwater at one time. So they formed these are giant, like what I could call these like lion's tails. This is the oasis. This is my cover slide, and Bonnie Armstrong there. And the oasis is an old pool basin area. All the water's gone away, but you can see the pool basin formations all around it. This is a cute little soda straw on the end of a snake dancer. This thing's probably only a couple of inches apart. And this is more dripping draperies. And then we do climbs. That's how things are found these days, a lot of climbing. There's a climber and Larry Schaefer from South Dakota climbing up and doing a little move over here, but nothing went. He went up in that area and there was nothing. So that was a disappointing climb. There's more snake dancers. You can see giant water drops. They're not that giant. These things are really tiny. This is probably a few inches across, but it's pretty. Another aragonite bush up close. This is the chandelier ballroom again. Here we are with Larry and his climbing gear. You can see all the gear laid out, and he was going to go do some climbing in the area. So not here in this room, but that's where we stopped and put all the gear so we could catch our breath. This is a nice little chandelier on the way past there. And this is a place called Tower Place. This was in that 1991 National Geographic article So these photos might look familiar from that article. It's an amazing area, but it's not the most amazing. The most amazing was only found a few years ago. And I'm going to show that at the end. That's the room called Zion, a chamber called Zion, an area called Zion. So here's a Tower Place. You can see how it got the name. Well, what can I say? Looks like a big Medusa or whatever, a squid or some kind of sea creature. I don't know what you call it, but it's all dripstone and formation where the water's been dripping off that thing. This one of the pools, this is called the Pearlsian Gulf because it had a lot of pearls in it. And this is one of the film crew. We were actually carrying these batteries in. You can see these big lead acid batteries going in with the foam around them in those packs. So we were doing that every other day or every day for a week so that they could keep the cameras going and lights going for 8 days underground. This was for the Planet Earth that came out about a decade ago. And there's the team for that one in the cave. And there I am. And we would go in and out and bring gear and bring things in and out that they needed from their production coordinator who was on the surface at a motel in Carlsbad. This is an area in the promised land, really amazing. Another drapery, another rope. And here we are looking at a little computer trying to figure out where we are. We have it all in the computers now, and we take tablets and not laptops, but tablets and small screen devices like this so we can find all of it because they're so complicated. There's a caver climbing over a pit. Some more fossils, beautiful fossils, crinoid stem. This is an area I named El Malpais because it's really desolate, dry, and really sharp and ugly in there. See how it looks, but we call it the Malpais. Okay, I'm going to quickly show the Northeast Corridor. That was a discovery I found by climbing up this narrow chute for 50 feet without a rope, and I got to the top, it opened up. So there's my guy, Scott, there following me up, and I threw a line down so he could hold on, but we eventually found a whole bunch of passage up there. And there we are on the Discovery Day. Pretty excited. We found that. And we found this. Like noodles. It's gypsum needles again, selenite, gypsum flowers on the floor. And some beautiful selenite. We call these night lights. Instead of chandeliers, they're night lights, but they're really cool mineral. Then I'm going to show you Emerald City that led to Oz. That's this little red mark in the middle of the cave to the left. And there's the green marks on the rock that caused me to call it Emerald City. First it was Emerald Isle, but once I went through a small crawl and opened up, I named it Emerald City. And we found more green stuff in there. And this is Emerald City. But you don't see a lot of green because it's not all green. There's just little spots of green like this. And this is like a dragon. This French caver is looking at it, but if you look at the shadow, the outline looks like a big dragon looking at him. I love this photo. And then there's this thing that went up at the end, up, up, up. And we climbed up and we got up, and then we realized at the top, how are we gonna get up to this bridge 75 feet above us? Because the rock was all rotten and it was impossible to just bolt up it. It looked really difficult for the climbers like James. And so I came up with this thing, I call it the rock caster. It's a slingshot with a spinning wheel, a Zebco spinning reel for $10.99 from Walmart strapped to it. And so what I do is I shoot a fishing line up with a lug bolt, a lug nut over the bridge. Then I pull up a small line, then pull up a bigger line, and eventually pull up a climbing rope. And that way we didn't have to climb it, we just shot over it. It took us a couple of trips to get that to work, but there's what they climbed on the left. You can see the double tubes going up, and they went over that bridge with the line. And there's a person on the right sitting on that bridge. It's really scary because that thing was only a couple of feet across. You can see there's not much there. But that was a good place to put an anchor for the next climb up. And there they go. The climbers going up, Derek Bristol, James Hunter climbed this thing over a period of 5 days, I guess, 4 days. And they went all the way up and they named it the Kansas Twister. And they opened up into the place we now call Oz. And there's James looking at some of the rock to find a good placement. And you can see the bedding again because he's high up in the back reef part of the formation. This is Derek Bristol's map, climb map of Oz, of all the ropes to get up there. It's 410 feet up to get to Oz now. And there's a bunch of ropes and it takes a long time for a person to get up there. So you have to go stage it because you don't want to clobber each other with rocks as you're going up. So Oz is that red thing going across. It's actually more extensive than I showed here, but it just cut across at a weird angle up high in the cave. And this is Oz. So for scale, there's a person. I put my mouse where the person is. So it's really big up there. And there is a person in the middle of this photo where the mouse is and the light, that's a flash going off. That's a person for scale. So it's a giant cavern up there. And we found lots more pretty stuff. These are just some photos up in Oz. Lots of dripstone-y stuff, lots of flowstone, lots of soda straws, stalactites, stalagmites, columns, layer cake, whatever you want to call these, they're all in there. Here we are on one of the early trips up there, one of the teams, and we have to change our clothes and change our shoes, change our clothes depending on where we are in there because we don't want to get it dirty. In this particular area, we were still dirty, but we had clean shoes on because we walked across the surface. And this looks like clouds. These are called coralloid plains or trays. It's a flat surface like you see on the right. There's a flat surface. And these almost went together. There's a stalagmite and stalactite, and they're just big coralloid formations of calcite, popcorn, and aragonite. And then there's James drilling a bolt to go down this pit. I didn't show how far we went down, but it was, oh God, I don't know. It's like, took us 2 or 3 days to go down it, and it went, I think, 300 feet of rope. And we got to the bottom and it was a dead end. And that's what it looked like on the way down. This is an acid rillen cairn. These big ridges on the wall are where the acid ran down during the deposition, during the solutional phase when it was sulfuric acid in the cave. That's what it did to the wall there. It just ran down and made these big grooves. There's a pretty pool up in Oz. And then there's this weird thing I found here that's a bunch of breadsticks glued together. It's just crazy. It's soda straws. And the thing on the right here, you can see it's got these little things curled around it and snake dancers. And then you've got what we call a coke table. That's a little table. It's where it used to be a water line right here, and it's gone, and this is curved. That's not an artifact of the camera. That's really curved like that from, I guess, air currents. And there's another old pool cover, pool calcite surface of a pool. But it's all dried up now. Okay, that's a lion's tail on the left. That's what we call that. And then sometimes it's really dirty. I showed mostly the pretty stuff today, but there's a lot of dirty stuff in this cave. So there's Derek Bristol looking up and this crap falling on him. Mud. This is during the filming of the 2016 Newtopia production for National Geographic. It was called One Strange Rock, I think. And this was like episode on water. They filmed for 8 days in the cave. They came out and most of it ended up on the cutting room floor, and they got 5 minutes at the most in the production. But that's the way they go. They spend not millions, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million for the week to film in there. And there they are with the jib crane. This is a composite fiber, carbon fiber thing, so it's super light. This time we didn't use lead acid, we used lithium ions, so the batteries were much lighter. And this is a pool. This is Zion, the discovery of Zion a few years ago. And it was a pool like this. They had to get around the edge, go through a small hole, and they found this. and this. So it's pretty spectacular. I haven't even been to Zion. I think Beth may have, but it's a beautiful decorated area. Here's some more pictures of it. I'm just about to wrap up here, just to let you know. But here's a climber going up a rope onto the right there. You can see him up there, the rope. They're basically looking for every way forward, but eventually they got shut down. It all ended, and it's all decorated like this. And this is Derek's map of Zion. So you can see Zion right here, and there's the way they got into it. There's the pool, and there's Oasis I showed earlier. So there we are after a week underground, pretty dirty, pretty filthy. At night, this was a nice moonlit night, so I got a good picture. This is years ago. And that's what happens to your shoes if you have crappy shoes. This guy brought shoes that were 2 years old. I told him, don't do that. And they blew out on him. This was last December. So that's the end of my talk. These are the photographers whose photos I was allowed to use for this. And that's a pair of my gloves back when I used to use leather gloves after one trip in there that they got mangled. So that's it.
Great, thank you so much, John. We do have a lot of questions coming in on the chat, and people can feel free to keep typing in there. I will try to keep up.
What do I do here? Do I stop share or what?
No, you can leave it on this slide. That's fine. And I'll go ahead and start our videos, and we can just chat here, and I'll read you off these questions.
Okay.
So first off, with, oh gosh, hold on, there's so many. With the origins of pandemics being attributed to zoonosis, with bats playing an important role, have you had to deal with bats, and what extra precautions do you need to take?
Well, because Lechuguilla was dug into and it was actually closed for, thousands of years, we believe, there are no bats in that cave. There's only bat bones, and we found a lot of bones in the cave from the bats, and they've been dating them and things, but they're thousands of years old, I believe. And so we don't have a bat issue in this cave, but Carlsbad Caverns does have bats, and so they're taking a lot of precautions. And it's not so much the worrying about the effect of the bats carrying a pandemic to us. We're worried about us hurting the bats. One of the things is the white nose syndrome, which has been killing off bats all over the country now. It's moving west right now. That's basically a pandemic for the bats, and it's wiping out certain species, and hopefully over a few more years, it's gonna end its course and the bats will be resilient to it and be able to survive, okay?
All right, how do you geolocate underground to determine your position to do the mapping?
Well, we use those, it's dead reckoning. Dead reckoning means the beginning point was the beginning of the cave entrance, and for every survey on is built on the last survey. So you'll shoot a bearing, inclination, and a distance, plot that, it goes in the computer, and there's a line, and then there's another line, then there's another line, and they build on each other. So you find yourself pretty much by the accuracy of those lines. And by using modern instruments, we've improved the accuracy a lot. So we can go thousands of feet and only have an error of a few feet maybe in our direction. So that's how we do it. And then we have maps. So we don't have any equipment that can do it magnetically except for compasses. And there is no GPS down underground.
Thanks, John. We had a couple questions about local caves. Someone said they were in San Pedro Parks and Dos Ojos Cave and Gallina Caves. Any information about those and upcoming trips?
Come to the Pajarito Grotto. We can try to get some trips. Right now, we're not doing much up there for the COVID-19. We're trying to stay distanced, but several of us have made trips up there to just check on things, and everything's still wide open up there in the forest. It's just that we have to get up there, and we actually drove up in separate cars when we went up. It was kind of ridiculous, but we did it, and we took radios in a car so we could talk to each other, so we wouldn't have to ride in the same cars. But we haven't got any trips going right now to Gallina, Dos Ojos, or the other one, because They're pretty far up in there, but I'm hoping maybe by the fall we can at least take some people, because we have some newcomers that want to go see them too. So please contact the Pajarito Grotto on the NSS website. I think you can just look it up, nss.org, I believe it is, and look up the Pajarito Grotto.
All right. How long does it take to get to the furthest point in Lechuguilla?
The furthest point in Lechuguilla is probably 12 hours max. Because you get to the camps, let's say you're at a camp that's 8 hours out, and then maybe it's 3 more hours to the frontier. The big problem isn't the distance. It's that sometimes you're crawling and climbing, and then sometimes you have to change your clothes like twice because you're dirty and you go through a pristine area and you got to keep it clean. That's what takes the time. So, I mean, if you could just walk to everything, I think you could do it in 7 or 8 hours, 9 hours to get to the ends, but you got to do all these maneuvers. So it takes a little longer. And by the way, the cave is only a couple of miles long on the surface. If you go from the west to the eastern end of the cave, it's really literally about 2 miles long. Fort Stanton Cave is much longer on the surface, but Lechuguilla is so three-dimensional. That's where it gets all the miles.
All right, so we've had a couple questions about the oil and gas industry in and around Carlsbad. The Permian Basin in Greater Carlsbad in West Texas is now the largest oil field in the world. Can you speak to what fracking impacts, if any, you've seen in the cave, and if oil and gas poses any threat to the integrity of the cave in future research?
Well, originally when they found the cave in 1986, they were very concerned because there was a driller who wanted to get a permit about 2 miles from Lechuguilla Cave. And the BLM owned that land outside of the national park. So eventually there was a big fight over it, and they went ahead and allowed the driller to drill. They drilled a dry hole, they bent their bit, they didn't hit the deposits they wanted, so they spent millions of dollars, I think 25 at least, and they basically gave up on it. Since then, there's been legislation to produce this protective zone, kind of a wilderness area where the cave is, but it doesn't really go outside of the national park. So they're at the whim of the BLM. But luckily, a lot of the oil and gas that the BLM's drilling, that's drilled on BLM land, is not that close. I mean, it's still 4 or 5 miles from Lechuguilla, and the cave hasn't spread in those directions. So we haven't really found any intrusion of oil and gas, let's say hydrocarbons coming up in the cave nowadays. There is sulfur in the cave, which remnant sulfur from the early deposits that's indicative of how the cave was formed. But the real impact we see is the surface impact. When you go to Carlsbad Caverns, there's light now. When you look to the east, you can see light. It looks like a city over Texas. All those lights are strictly well pads and pump stations and substations. There's really not that many people over there. It's just automatic equipment running day and night. So the view of night skies at Carlsbad is sort of limited now from the national park because of all the light pollution. And there is a haze that happens at certain days that actually you can smell it in the air. So it has an impact on the caves there, but it's not in the cave, it's on the surface.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned LiDAR technology, so we had a couple people pipe up about that. Can you comment on any 3D mapping options for caves? We were talking back and forth again about LiDAR chatting, but someone shared a link to technology that's typically used for sort of automated scanning of building interiors.
Yep. So the LiDAR, used to be $100,000. Then it became $60,000. Now it's like $20,000. The park has experimented and tried some LiDAR equipment in some of the caves in the national park. I don't believe they've done it in Lechuguilla yet, but they've done it in Carlsbad Cavern. I may be getting this wrong, but they've done it in some of the caves, tried it out. Fort Stanton Cave has also tried it out, and some innovative hobbyists have built their own systems now that are less than $1,000 that seem to work. So they're using those in Fort Stanton Cave down in Lincoln County, New Mexico, and there's quite a bit of LiDAR going on in there. There's also Well, that's it. That's pretty much it. In Carlsbad Cavern, I think they're very interested in it, but I don't see us replacing ourselves with the LiDAR system, because you pretty much have to take it everywhere you want to see a passage, set it up, it has to scan, and then if you go around a corner and there's a little hole, well, the LiDAR didn't see that, so you have to now set it in that little hole and scan that. So there's cases where the way we do it with walking and crawling and carrying our instruments really is a benefit. So I think they work hand in hand, and over time there'll probably be LiDAR in some of these big chambers, but you know, it's got to be cheap enough that you don't mind smashing your instrument.
All right, a couple questions about our lights and how we power our lights for a week.
Okay, so the early photos I showed, people were using carbide, which is a acetylene flame, and that was the early stuff. But once they discovered sulfur in the cave, they said, wait a minute, if that sulfur ever catches on fire from somebody's lamp, we're going to have a mess, because, you know, sulfur, when it burns, it just keeps going and emits a horribly dangerous vapor. So they outlawed it early on, no more flame lamps. And so then people went to flashlight batteries and incandescent bulbs. And over time, we've gone to LEDs now, and you're amazing what you can do with LEDs. You can have these incredible lights that last a week on just some batteries that you can hold in your hands. So we're pretty much all using LED lamps now.
Yeah, and rechargeable batteries that are pretty high efficiency.
True, you can bring in enough rechargeable batteries that you take them out, recharge them for the next trip, and you can get by with like 3 batteries the size of your hand, or some, I mean, they fit in the palm of your hand, and that'll go for a week in this cave.
A couple questions about drone usage in caves.
Well, it's not allowed in national parks. Unfortunately, that's just a rule. So we haven't gotten permission to put a drone in any of the Carlsbad Caverns caves. If you wanted to do it in a private cave, you could, but there's some logistical problems. One is you got to have enough light to see where your drone's flying. So you got to have bright lights to see the drone. It needs bright lights to see where it is so you can film it, take movies with it or videos. And you better have a prop guard so it doesn't go slamming into the wall and crash. You need a propeller guard. So it's not so easy. I know there are people that have been doing it out east in some caves, but we haven't really adopted it yet.
How much air circulation is there in Lechuguilla? Are there low oxygen hazards?
No, there's no low oxygen hazards in the cave. It's got so much air. It's got microclimates because the cave is 1,500, almost 1,600 feet deep. There's actually a gradient from the surface down to the deepest point of maybe a degree of temperature rise as you get deeper towards the center of the earth. So that gradient in temperature causes air currents. And so the cave has air currents all the time in there, and that's how we find new passages. We can feel the air and know this is a good area to be looking for another hole. But I have never seen a case in there where it's bad air. Other caves, yes, there are caves that have bad air. I'm an expert on that, but not Lechuguilla.
And kind of related, we have a couple questions about cooking and the exhaust from stoves.
Oh, not those, the jet boils. I mean, we're talking like a minute and a half and you're boiling water, and we don't have an issue with that. Early on, people were bringing in sterno stoves and bringing in alcohol stoves and bringing in white gas stoves. And they pretty much, we've all focused now on just using the little gas canisters, and there's hardly any pollution from those. And we're in big areas where we're using them, so we don't notice it.
Do you know about how long ago was there water in the pool basins that are so colored, and what happened to the water?
Well, some of those pool basins are actually active still, and they don't disappear. That's where we get water. And so they're refilling from the groundwater, but they're like 800 to 1,000 feet deep. So the water's not polluted. It's been, checked. And those pools are still active. They're dripping and continually running and making water. And then it, runs over and goes somewhere if we don't drink it. But some of those old pools are definitely drying up. And I would, have to ask somebody like Jake Turin, I saw who's on here watching, but somebody else would have to speak to the age of the pools. I know that, There are some strange pools in this cave that have really weird chemistry. I know that. And there's a lot of biology around the pools.
Speaking of biology, what animals live in the cave?
The only thing we've seen, as you know, Beth, are the crickets and the little diplurans and the little bugs that come in the entrance. We think they're getting through the airlock or around the airlock. And so you see them till maybe Boulder Falls, and then you don't see anything beyond there. That's maybe 20, 30 minutes into the cave. And we don't see anything alive beyond that except microbial life. And there's a lot of fungus. There's a lot of stuff eating in the cave. There's stuff eating the rock in the cave and leaving these brown deposits that we called ferromanganese residue or corrosion residue. That stuff is actually the byproduct of the microbial life that's eating into the rock down there. So it's a neat place because it's like extremophiles living in there. So, you know, there have been people from NASA in there. Penny Boston, who's worked at NASA quite a bit, she's been very active in there, and people are studying some of the microbial life down in the cave. But if you were to leave some kind of sugary substance and spill it in the cave, within a day, there'll be a big fungus on top of it, eating it like a fluff ball.
Do you lose track of time? Does the day seem to feel like night and night feel like day after a few days underground?
Absolutely. I carry a watch for that reason. I used to just let it go, and on one trip we were going like 32 hours, as was our day-night cycle. And we all got sick. We all got colds. Somebody brought a cold in, and pretty soon we all had it. So it wasn't a great idea. So nowadays, I actually try to stick with the clock and get up at 7 in the morning and have breakfast and try to stick with the schedule. And I think most of us do that now because we don't like to get completely off, because the last day is the day you're coming out, and you really want to get out in daylight and go to a nice restaurant and have real food again in Carlsbad, if there is such a thing. But, you know, if you get out of the cave and it's the middle of the night, you're not going to get anything. So you want to plan it to get out. Well, you sure don't want to be asleep through that. So you have to kind of plan it to get back on your cycle.
Can you talk a little bit about contamination, like dead skin or lint or hair? I guess someone says they visited Carlsbad Caverns and the rangers spoke a lot about how humans are impacting caves, and she was wondering what special things we do for Lech.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely human impact. And all those concerns. The one thing is that we don't have thousands, tens of thousands of people going through there like you do Carlsbad Cavern. So it's a little less, but we know about, you know, hair and lint and dead skin cells falling off. So when we camp in there, we have a lot of rules now, like you camp over a tarp and you're not really allowed to dump your tarp out when the last day and shake it out. You actually roll it up, carry all that stuff back out with you, and you try not to do things like brush your hair and, you know, scratch your skin and stuff just over the trail in the cave. And we're very careful about not spilling food and stuff. So we take a little more care than the general public does in Carlsbad Cavern, but still we're not doing the greatest. I mean, the cave definitely shows impacts. What's really frustrating is when you come back after another trip has been in there and you find these fungus balls where somebody must have spilled a tidbit of food and the fungus got around it. So that's a little bit of a problem. And one of the interesting things is you see that rope in the top of this picture. That rope has a special sizing or material on it. Sometimes when a new rope is put in the cave, it actually will grow like a slime mole on the rope, eating the chemicals on the surface of the rope. So there's a lot of discussion in science in that, what to do.
Okay, sorry. I think those are all the ones that I got from before, and now I have to go through the chat. So I will do my best. Actually, there's a question that was right along that those lines. Someone asked about kind of how much damage to cave structures are justified when we're searching for new passages.
In Lechuguilla Cave, very little. We actually have to take photos and then go get approval at the park, and we might be able to move a rock or something the following year. but they weigh all the benefits and the disadvantages of doing it. They say, okay, is it just dirt and rocks sitting on the floor that you're going to move, or is it that beautiful flowstone and formations? Rarely, if ever, do they allow anybody to break any formations. I mean, like soda straws and things to get to somewhere. So we have rules about that. And so, you know, yeah, we don't just go smashing through to find new stuff. But if we get into really gnarly, nasty areas, then we'll say, oh, this is really good. The air is good here, but it's got to be pushed, but we got to move a rock or chisel away. We take a photo, we measure it, we go back and ask the park, and then next year they may allow us to go push it.
And you saw in a lot of the photos that there's the flagging tape marking off the things like trails and areas where you can camp and areas where you can rest on the trail. And you have to stay inside of those at all times unless you have special permission. Okay. Any chance that ordinary folks will ever get to go a little ways into Lechuguilla?
Only if those ordinary folks join a caving group or contact someone like me or someone else who's leading trips into this cave and getting permits, and that person has all the qualifications to do the vertical, wear the gear, know how to climb ropes, practiced, and can handle the heat, and don't have heart conditions. And there's a lot of ifs. So basically join us as a cadre of cavers and explorers is the way to do it. But no, the general public is never going to get in there. It's just not going to happen because they originally, when they found the cave, Carlsbad wanted to put an elevator in it. That got killed pretty quick because it's just too hard. And those pristine areas are way far distance from each other. So, you know, you go to one and then you go for hours to get to the next one. So they're not all like I showed one after the other.
Okay, have you seen any water table differences over time? And is the water table connected with the aquifers?
Yes, the deepest point in the cave, which is Lake of the White Roses, is in that 1590, whatever that was, 1560 to 1600 feet. That is definitely fluctuates. And it appears to fluctuate quite a bit, like 20, 30 feet over 10 years, 20 years. And it goes up and down. So it is affected by the regional aquifer. If we're in a drought, it's going down. If we get some wet periods, it starts to come back up, it seems. At least that's my interpretation of what's going on. But yeah, the cave is down at that point in the cave is pretty much at the regional aquifer where wells would be hitting water, I think.
I think the last trip down there noted that it was very low.
Huh.
Or much lower than before. All right.
One of the pools, I guess I can add, the pools near the entrance. There's pools in the first, what would you say, Beth? In the first 10 minutes in the cave, there's a pool. And some of those pools have dried out or almost dried out. They're just a little mud puddle now, and they used to be like 3 feet deep. And we believe that is directly related to the air leakage in the airlock. Isn't perfect. Some air leaks through, so it's drying out that part of the cave, as well as the water, the fact that it's been such a dry 20 years or so. So those pools have really disappeared in the first couple of pools.
And then at other times, I mean, they fluctuate a lot with surface weather too. So
Yep, when they were filming the Planet Earth, it was in November and it was raining all week and it was freezing cold, and we were hiking across there at night in the cold in our shorts to get to the cave, to get out of the cave, to go back to the hotel. And after we were carrying all the batteries, and there was actually showers in the cave coming out of places we didn't expect. There was so much water coming in.
It actually flooded over the trail a couple of years ago too, when I think like a bigger system came up into southern New Mexico and kind of sat there and rained a bunch and overflowed one of the pools that we can usually just walk around. All right, the big pictures like we took in Zion, how do you light them?
Oh, those photos were taken with many flashes, right, Beth?
Yeah, I think the Zion one was actually 6 flashes. They're controlled by radio slaves.
Yeah, so the modern camera slaves are so much nicer now, so you can have all these radio control slaves and flash them all at once, or, you know, so it's not like the old days where you open the shutter and everybody holds still and don't turn on your light and don't move and wait for enough light. You know, some of these digital cameras now are incredible. The ASA, ISO on them, so ISO, so they're using those along with really good flashes now. And that's the only way. If you saw what we saw with our little headlamps, all you'd see is a spot of light.
Our lights are pretty good, but yeah, the flashes and you know, the photos that come out from these extremely talented cave photographers are pretty amazing.
Like James.
Like James and everybody else on this list.
Max, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some good ones.
Speaking of photos, someone asked if you can recommend a good book of photos of Lechuguilla.
Of course. It's called Jewel of the Underground. Look it up. Jewel of the Underground, 2nd edition. I think that's the last book, and it's 20-something years old now. And it does not show all the latest things. There hasn't been another book since. There's also some fun reading books like Deep Secrets, I think is one of them. They're about the discovery of Lechuguilla Cave and some of the interpersonal stuff that went on in the early days. There's that, and there's a couple of others that people have self-published. But Jewel of the Underground is the only real coffee table photo book that we have right now. And you can look online and find people's photographs, though. If you look carefully, you'll find some really good stuff.
Yeah, look up, actually the last name on this list, Max Vishak, has a very good website with lots of photos of Lechuguilla. And I have heard talk of a new book that needs to come out with the latest and the greatest photos in Lechuguilla because of so many advances in photography and digital photography and flashes and everything. Okay, sorry, we'll get on to more questions here. Do you have to prepare for any biological hazards in the cave, like the bacteria that you mentioned? We already mentioned the low oxygen.
No low oxygen problem. Bacteria, you just don't want to spread it and get into a place that, like if there's a new pool in the cave, we're not really allowed to go to the edge of the pool. We're supposed to photograph it, explain it to the national park, and let them decide, do we want to impact it? Because some of these pools are definitely carrying a lot of microbial activity around the edges and things. So we have to be careful not to affect them. But in terms of being careful, there's only a couple of places like the red dot pool. There's a couple of places, the dilithium crystals, I don't think those are poisonous, but they're really beautiful. You wouldn't want to actually get that in you, drink it. But the other ones, the red dot pool, or the pink dot pool, I think it's called. There's something there that's not real healthy, but no one's going to drink from an ugly pool with little pink dots around it anyway.
Gosh, a couple questions about like connections and other caves in the area. Slaughter Canyon Cave, main Carlsbad Caverns, there's over 100 caves on Carlsbad Caverns National Park property. So any connections between them?
Not between Lechuguilla, no. We've tried, and the closest one to Lechuguilla is called Manhole. Manhole is right down the road from a gas well, a drilled gas well. And we have been trying for years to find a way in Manhole because it blows air just like, not quite the same volume as Lechuguilla, but it blows good air. And we've gotten about 126 feet under the surface over the years and kind of lost interest in it. There are people now interested in going back there, but it's 3,500 feet from Lechuguilla Cave and it's not connected so far.
Kind of related here, what are the chances there's another big cave nearby?
I think it's pretty high. We just have to find an entrance, a manifestation of a cave. I think there's, that reef is not just going to have Lechuguilla and then blank hard rock around it. There's going to be more. It's just Lechuguilla was a great place for the gases to vent up and well up from there. So it really created a lot of passages, but I suspect there's other caves. And there's caves on BLM land that are pretty exciting, that are only less than 10 miles from Lechuguilla, that are kind of like Lechuguilla, but a lot smaller. You know, they have the white stuff and everything. And there's caves in the National Forest and the Guadalupe National up there, and the Lincoln National Forest. I mean, there's caves up there that are, you know, pretty interesting too. So, but yeah, there's more caves.
Any potential for using ground penetrating radar to find new areas?
We've tried it around the Manhole Project, which is that other hole northwest of Lechuguilla or northeast of Lechuguilla. And it doesn't do very well on that horrible terrain or the rocks in the hills. You have to do a lot of mathematical massaging to make something that looks reasonable. And we have been able to, we know where there's some passage and we've seen it. So it does work. It only goes like, let's say a couple of 100 feet if you're lucky, if you got a really good system. And that's really pushing it. And a lot of these caves are really deep, so it only finds the shallow stuff near the surface. But yeah, we've used it a little bit. It's expensive equipment. We borrow it from New Mexico Tech or from a group called NICRI, the National Cave and Karst Research Institute in Carlsbad. It's called NICRI, and they have some equipment now.
I'll just answer this one question from someone. Yes, we are recording this talk and it'll be available on our YouTube channel, hopefully within a couple days or a week.
All right.
All right, somebody says, I'm interested in doing things like what you've been doing. He's currently only 16. What skills should I learn now if I someday want to help with mapping caves like Lechuguilla?
Well, join us and do some caves that are not Lechuguilla. Go to some of the local caves in the National Forest, like somebody mentioned, the caves up near San Pedro Parks Wilderness, up there north of Abiquiu, northwest of Abiquiu. There's, you know, we have some projects there. We have caves down in the big area between Vaughn and Carlsbad. There's a bunch of caves on private land and BLM land. There's caves in the National Forest. There's a lot of other caves to map. And if this person wants to join us, please do. We'll train them and everything. And then get real good with your body in terms of being able to climb around in rocks and things and get rid of your fear of tight spaces. You gotta have a pretty good feeling that you're gonna be fine and you're not gonna get stuck.
Yeah, definitely a plug for joining up and getting involved with the Pajarito Grotto. We meet once a month, and a lot of the cavers from around here are involved in projects like Lechuguilla and other projects around the state and around the country, around the world. So yeah, get to know them, and the skills are your cave mapping, like climbing, and you got to be in shape for outdoor activities. So hiking and yeah.
And we'll teach you the rope stuff. You don't have to go buy all the equipment. We can teach a person how to do the ropes so that you get the right equipment tuned to them.
Okay, so.
There's more?
Oh yeah, we're still going. How hard is it to get into exploration or science trips into Lechuguilla these days?
It's not so hard. It's actually just get a hold of one of us who's been doing trips a lot and talk to us. And, you know, if you have the right skill set and you can contribute, we will invite you. We put you on the permit. The Park Service will vet it and say, well, this person may not be experienced enough, or yeah, they look great. We kind of go through the Park Service. They make the final call, but we make the recommendation. I have a team of, say, 6 people, and 2 of them are newcomers. We always make it so that at least 50% of the people are experienced in this cave before the other, say, 50% can be newcomers. And but we don't take newcomers on a camp trip 8 hours in a cave. We let them do a day trip first, or a shorter camp trip, or, you know, it's just too much to expect a person to carry 40 pounds and do all these ropes and go to the far ends of the cave. So we kind of, you know, work it slowly up to that.
All right, a question from a 6-year-old girl listening. What happens if you get hurt in the cave?
I left those slides out because of time, but I have some slides of a rescue in the cave. And there have been I can personally think of 4 that I've been around. I was on one of them on the rescue team, but there have been 4 pretty, significant ones where a person got exhausted and had to get out. They needed an IV because they had lost so much water, they got dehydrated. There was a case where a person broke a leg. There was a case where another person broke a leg. Another person broke something and fell a little bit. And in all these cases, it's been self-rescues or rescues with cavers. We've managed to protect ourselves and call in our friends or the experts around the state and get them out. So it hasn't been a huge thing, except that one back in '91 that was so early that they called in a lot of experts from all over the country. But these days, we've managed to get through, and the cave has a big rescue plan now. The national park has put ropes in the cave, and they've got plans for all the obstructions and tight spaces and things. Not all of them, but they've got a lot of plans in place so that we would know what to do if somebody was to get hurt. We would send people out, get help, and then they bring more people, experienced people, and we'd set up people along the way and help them get out.
All right, I've been looking at this picture of leather gloves. So somebody asked, what kind of gloves and boots and equipment do you use now?
Do you want me to stop this one and make it go away?
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm just.
I can stop here.
No, I want
to see what it looks like. Okay,
I just wanted to.
I was kind of old school and wore leather gloves beyond what a lot of people did. They get really clammy and wet from being sweaty in there. So most of us now are wearing these nice little tight vinyl gloves, work gloves that, you can buy them at like Metzger's or Frank's Supply. I get them at Frank's actually, buy a pack of 10. And they're work gloves and they're real light because you're not sweating so much in them. They're cooler. And then for boots, just good hiking boots. Don't buy $20 boots and expect them to last. You probably want at least $50 boots, but maybe more. And we tend to dope up our boots with stuff we put like shoe goo and various products on them to beef up the stitching so the boots don't blow out so easy. We doctor them up, put stuff on them. And the clothes we wear, like I said, shorts, knee pads, elbow pads. Some people wear leggings. It's all polymer. We don't try to wear any cotton if we can avoid it because you just roast in it and you stay wet. And that's it.
All right. Have you ever been in an earthquake inside the cave, and does it damage the formations?
I have not. Someone was in an earthquake in the cave. They told me about it, or I read about it. Apparently nothing moved, but there was an earthquake while they were in the cave because they knew by when people told them, did you see the earthquake? It was an earthquake in Carlsbad area, a little one, and they didn't notice it. And I think this was before fracking. So it was way back. So I don't think it was related to the fracking controversy of earthquakes from fracking. But no, I haven't seen any issues with it. There's formations that have fallen in the cave that we wonder how they fell, but none of us have witnessed it happen,
Not in our lifetime, or at least the exploration timing in Lech.
Other caves in the U.S., yes, it has happened. Not so much earthquakes, but freeze thaw, disturbances on the surfaces where people have gotten killed from rockfall. Even at Fort Stanton Cave, one time there was a collapse near the entrance from freeze thaw cycles and some rocks fell, but no one was there when it happened.
What do you do when you find a hole that is too small to fit through?
Can't go through it. You get the smallest person you got and ask them if they can do it. And if they can't do it, no one can. Sometimes we go, one person will get through. And so the other people say, what do you see in there? And they go, well, it's a little room. And he said, well, map it, bring out the data. None of us are coming in there. It's too tight. So you'll self-map it and bring it out, and I have been on one of those where I actually got in a place so tight that I had to chip my way to get back out of it. I had permission to chip in, and then it ended, and then I couldn't get back out because my ribs were like gills. They got caught on the rocks. So it took another 30 minutes and chip my way to just get rid of the obstruction so I could get my ribs past it, my chest bones. So you do have tight stuff like that you can't do.
Are there any big film projects trying to get permitted now?
I think there's one more. I heard something about it a year or two ago that there is another group. You know, they shot 4K and 8K digital cameras in 2016 and said, this is the best footage you're ever going to get. And we've got it all captured now. And they gave it to the park. They only used a little bit of it in that television series, the One Strange Rock, but they have a lot of footage. Well, somebody's come up and said, no, I want more footage. We got something else we want to do. So I guess there's going to be another one at some point. I don't know. The park doesn't say no sometimes.
All right. Gosh. How close to the surface does Oz get?
I think it's within several hundred feet.
Are the fossils in the cave special or unusual?
They're the same kind of fossils you would find anywhere in the Guadalupe Mountains. They're representative of the Permian era, and they're impressive in Lechuguilla because they haven't been stolen, vandalized, taken out, and they haven't been run over by people. We put flagging around them. You'll see in the pictures there's a little flagging, checkered flagging around them to prevent people from stepping on them or touching them. And but they're pretty much representative of the fossils you would see if you're looking on the rocks in Carlsbad Cavern, except that in Lechuguilla, there are some big ones, but I think it's fairly representative of what you would find elsewhere.
Do you treat or filter the water for drinking? And do you have to know which pools are chemically okay for drinking?
Yes, it depends on the person and their makeup. Some people are more sensitive to others. And so some people may get a bout of digestive, intestinal activity that they don't want. So they worry more and they treat and iodize their water or chlorinate their water with tablets. I used to do it a lot in the really popular camp, like where Lake Louise is and the Deep Seas camp in the Western Borehole, because so many people were going in there. I was worried that somebody's going to contaminate it and I didn't want to get sick. So I used to treat mine with the iodine tablets and the neutralizer. And I haven't been in that camp in actually quite some time now. In the Far East camp, hardly anyone goes out there, so I don't treat the water. It's really good and haven't had any issues. So it just depends on how you feel. But no, you don't have to do it. And we haven't really had any issues with water contamination that we know of. One of the Western camps years ago got closed because someone said there was I think it was E. coli present in the water. We think it might've been in the hose. There was a silicone hose and they were getting the water out through the hose, and maybe the hose was sticky enough that something was sticking in it and causing bacterial or microbial. But nope.
Are there continuing volunteer opportunities? If so, who do we contact?
Like I said, talk to Pajarito Grotto, look us up on the web and talk to us. Because yes, there's still day trips going in the cave, working near the entrance that are only less than an hour from the entrance. And those trips, I'm leading some of those. I actually love those trips because that's a good chance to bring new people in. And we've got mapping trips mostly, some photography, mostly mapping. And restoration is another thing I didn't mention. Restoration is where they clean the impact of people's boots where they've been, and they clean that and they'll put flagging to try to narrow the route so that people won't step off the trail. There's quite a bit of that going on too, and the flagging work.
If you wanted to just respond or reply to any of the emails that you got with tonight's talk information, I'll see those and I can direct you to the Pajarito Grotto if you need as well. All right, one last question. There's a ringtail fossil near Briny Pool. Any other new vertebrate fossils discovered? Where's Briny Pool?
I'm thinking that must be Jake.
Yes.
He would know that. He knows those pools pretty well. There have been some, oh gosh, isn't there a ringtail somewhere? I mean, a sloth or something in the cave. I thought there was some sloth bones. I don't know where they are. Ringtails are pretty common in the cave, you know, because they are all over that area and they somehow get in places that humans can't get. I don't know of any major bone discoveries, vertebrates, since I've been involved that, mostly invertebrate stuff. So I
There
can't
was
think of
nothing
any.
in the second Zion trip.
Yeah. I keep thinking of Oz because Oz is so far up there, but I don't remember anything in Oz. I could be wrong. Sorry. Okay.
Well, there's just a lot of thank yous coming in. Just, you know, amazing presentation. Thank you so much. Gosh, yeah, lots of kudos and thank you for sharing. Great talk. Yeah, thanks again, John. Any if anybody else has any last minute things, I'll watch this chat coming through. But yeah, I think we might wrap it up here. And all right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.